Hello, everyone, and welcome to Unit 2 of the course. So, I'm just going to jump right into everything. The assignments that were due last night at 11:59 p.m., as outlined in the tracking calendar, as well as my reminder and the announcements, you should have submitted the Unit 1 assignment, the Journal Reflection number 1, and Quiz number 1. I did not get too many emails regarding any confusion or anything like that. So really nice job. I do want to remind everyone to continue watching these unit videos. The confusion I did receive was of people not watching the welcome video and the Unit 1 video, which, as I mentioned, typically is what happens. So, I don't want to have to dock points off of anything for people not watching the videos because this is a part of the unit material. And like I said before, there is a lot of information in these that you're going to need to know. So make sure, if you haven't made a habit of it already, let's just make sure we're still viewing the unit videos. So Unit 1 is all wrapped up. You should have learned a little bit about the counseling profession, such as like the code of ethics that we have to abide by, connecting with the profession, some things about cultural competence. So, if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. I do close the units after the due date, just so that people aren't kind of like going in and messing around with drop boxes. But if there is any of the materials you would like to have, maybe to keep or to go over from a previous unit, just let me know. Let's see here. Okay, so Unit 2. So in Unit 2, we're going to get into a little bit about like what happens in counseling. So again, as I mentioned in the welcome video, we really don't talk about the counseling process, such as like techniques and whatnot. We do review a little bit as far as like a couple of theories in an upcoming unit about like approaches to counseling, but we aren't going to actually learn about the counseling process. So for this unit, we're going to talk about clinical mental health counselors and addiction counselors, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in just a minute. So for the assignments due for this unit, you're to watch this video, read chapters 3 and 6 in Helkowski in your book. There is a short YouTube video of what happens in mental health counseling, or what happens in counseling. This video kind of goes through and talks about the expectations between like the counselor and the client, such as like we're not there to be friends with the client. We are more there to kind of just like be like a helping hand, like a guide. And then this kind of falls in line with like the code of ethics that you guys went through in the first unit. So then you're going to read a supplemental article. You're going to complete the Unit 2 assignment, discussion board number 2, and then journal reflection number 2. So remember, for discussion board number 2, you are always posting your initial post and then commenting on 2 of your classmates' responses. So you'll have 3 posts altogether. If you want to, again, review the welcome video and the Unit 1 video, I can send that to you if you need help as far as what the expectations as far as like length and stuff are. Hopefully you guys wrote that down when you were going through, but if not, just shoot me an email. So for the discussion board number 2, we are going to watch a TED Talk on trauma-informed care. And I'm not going to go through what the exact definition of that is, because it does get talked about in the video, and it is something that you have to reflect on in the discussion board. But I will talk a little bit about it. So for discussion board number 2, the prompts are included in the tracking calendar, and they are also in the actual discussion board section. So you're going to watch this video presented by Dr. Kelly, and you're going to go through and answer the questions such as like, what is trauma-informed care? So yeah, go and dig a little bit deeper. I don't want to see a regurgitated version of what Dr. Kelly says trauma-informed care is. Go do some research. Tell me in your own words. Tell me what you're finding. Tell me like, what is your understanding of what trauma-informed care is? So then you're going to go through and you're going to talk about, in your own words, how does childhood trauma affect later development? There's a little bit of extra guidance for this question in the prompt. Then you're going to discuss why trauma-informed care is so important for individuals in the helping professions. And then what are your personal opinions on trauma-informed care? What does it mean to you? And do you have any questions? So one thing that I do want to make sure that I mention about trauma-informed care is that it is not an intervention. This is not something that we only practice with certain clients. This is like a universal approach to people. What I can say about it is that, we don't know anything about the people that we're just meeting, whether it's someone in your profession or a potential friend or a relationship or, whatever that is. You don't know what other people have endured. And so we want to be sure that we are approaching people kindly and sensitively. So when we're talking about trauma-informed care in the counseling profession, it is assuming that everyone that you have met has gone through something traumatic and being sensitive to that assumption so that we are not re-triggering anything. So that's a little bit about what trauma-informed care is. So I'm interested to see kind of what other ways you guys are able to describe it. So if you have any questions about that, let me know. Then we have journal reflection number 2. And so for this journal prompt, we are going to talk a little bit about our advocacy paper. So for our advocacy paper, I let you all know that we were going to kind of do this in pieces throughout the semester. So the advocacy paper, again, is where we are going to write a paper, so it's due at the end of the semester. But I want you to start thinking about your topics now. So you're going to write this paper on a vulnerable population that needs advocating for. And so what I want you to do is I want you to think about what the term advocacy actually means. So as we're considering the topic for our advocacy paper, let's be sure that we know what is meant by advocacy and what this looks like. So for the journal prompt, when you hear the term advocacy, what comes to mind and how can you advocate for others? So make sure you go through, be descriptive in that. And I just like to make sure that we all know what advocacy is as you're writing a paper on it before you write your paper at the end of the semester and you have a complete different idea of what advocacy means. So do a little bit of research. Let me know what you come up with in your journal reflection. So that is it as far as your assignments. So you have 3 assignments. They're going to be due on Sunday, September 25th by 11:59 p.m. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about clinical mental health counselors and addiction counselors. So I'm not sure, I don't recall how much I actually talked about myself in your welcome video and the Unit 1 video, but I have served in a number of these positions that we're going to learn about in this course, especially in Unit 2 and Unit 3. So I am a clinical mental health counselor, and I also serve in a position of an addiction counselor. So I'm an integrated clinician at my day position. So what is meant by that is I treat both mental health and substance use. So my specialization is actually in trauma. So I am certified in a number of different interventions that are evidence-based and known to be effective interventions for individuals. I'm really sorry about the light coming in. So for clinical mental health counselors, these individuals are licensed, and this makes it easier to bill insurance. So when we're talking about licensure, when you are licensed, it varies by state. So some states acknowledge one particular exam to be sufficient to become licensed as a licensed mental health counselor. Other states require an alternative exam to become a professional counselor, which is essentially just like an LMHC in another state. So the qualifications on how you can become licensed is different by state. Some states, like a lot of states, recognize the same exam that New York State does, but there are other states towards the west that require either a different exam or both of them. So what you typically would need to become a clinical mental health counselor is you would have to go to grad school, and it would have to be an accredited grad school. And then you would have to complete your program, do an internship, have supervised hours after graduating, and then take the exam and successfully pass the exam. When we're talking about addiction counselors, this is a little different. This is a certification in New York State. So this is a CASAC, so a certified alcohol and substance abuse counselor. The qualifications for education are a little bit different because you don't have to go through a formal like graduate program and all that stuff. You can have a certain number of education credits and then go through and take the exam and pass the exam, but that also is going to consist of a number of different education hours, internships, and kind of things to do that. So this is where it gets a little tricky as far as counselors, licensed mental health counselors, and addiction counselors. So, clinical mental health counselors or licensed mental health counselors can actually serve in the scope of addiction. So you don't have to formally have a CASAC to provide addiction services. So, for example, I'm an LMHC. I'm not a CASAC because I'm not required to have my CASAC because I can treat mental health, and then also like a scope of mental health is addiction treatment. So I know that's a little tricky, but it's not the other way around. Like you cannot be an addiction counselor and provide mental health counseling. That's just not the way it works. So it gets a little tricky. But I think the things that I want you to know, most of all, because this is a quiz question, is you cannot transfer your licensure among states. And just because you are an addiction counselor, you cannot also treat mental health because it would technically be out of scope and you need a different license in order to do that. So, for example, like I'm an LMHC, I'm an integrated therapist, but my boss is only a CASAC. She cannot provide mental health consultation with me because it's outside of her scope of practice. So I hope that makes sense. So I do want to note that when we are talking about trauma-informed care and you're watching the TED Talk and you're going through the discussion board questions, Dr. Kelly does mention the adverse childhood experiences study. Don't look too far into this because we're going to be going more into this in Unit 4 when we're talking about the children and adolescent counselors. So just stick with the trauma-informed care and you should be pretty good. So just as a reminder to everyone, September 25th is when these assignments are due. If you have any questions, any comments, reach out. Feel free to let me know. All right. Take care. I'll see you soon.